The view from the bridge of the human exploration ship Odyssey was, as always, a humbling spectacle of star-dusted infinity. Yet, in the grand theater of the galaxy, humanity was considered a bit player, a troupe of young actors who had only recently stumbled onto the cosmic stage. The older, more established civilizations, the hyperlogical Centauri, the pragmatic and powerful Cathar, the ethereal Mycalibrarians, viewed humans with a mixture of curiosity and condescension. Earth's children were seen as fragile, their societies driven by baffling surges of emotion, their sciences only just beginning to scratch the surface of universal truths. Their rich tapestries of mythology, their myriad religions, their epic poems of gods and monsters, were catalogued by xenoanthropologists as quaint, primitive attempts to explain a cosmos they were not yet equipped to understand. Humans were a curiosity, perhaps a species to be gently guided, uplifted, even when they finally outgrew their planetary adolescence. Then, from the silent, unremarkable void of Sector X9, a region long dismissed by galactic surveyors as empty, a pulse of energy unlike anything ever recorded rippled across the interstellar medium. It was powerful, rhythmic, and undeniably artificial. It was a call, or perhaps a beacon, from the deep unknown, and the major galactic powers, their interest piqued, turned their sophisticated sensors towards its source. A joint expeditionary fleet was hastily assembled. Gleaming Centauri dodecahedrons glided alongside utilitarian Cathar battle cruisers and Mycalibrarian bioships that resembled living coral reefs. Tucked away at the periphery of this impressive armada, more as a diplomatic afterthought, or perhaps simply due to its relative proximity at a nearby survey point, was the HES Odyssey. She was one of Earth's newest exploration vessels, a symbol of humanity's fledgling interstellar ambitions, yet here she was an ant among giants. On her bridge stood Captain Eva Rostova, a woman whose calm demeanor masked a keen intellect and a steely resolve. Beside her, occasionally murmuring into a data recorder, was Dr. Aris Thorne, a xenolinguist whose true passion lay in the esoteric realm of comparative mythology. His theories about universal archetypes and deep ancestral memories often earned him polite smiles and quiet skepticism from his more empirically minded colleagues. Watching them both with wide, eager eyes was Ensign Jian Li, young, brilliant, and thrilled to be part of humanity's grand adventure, however minor their current role. The fleet arrived in Sector X9 to a sight that silenced every calm channel. Before them hung a colossal, artificial construct, impossibly ancient, its sheer scale dwarfing even the largest capital ships into insignificance. It was a megastructure of unknown design and origin, its dark, scarred surface absorbing all light, showing no obvious entry points, no energy signatures save for the faint, fading echo of the pulse that had summoned them. A silent, brooding giant in the interstellar dark. The various alien contingents immediately set to work. The Centauri, masters of logic, attempted to establish a sophisticated mathematical dialogue with the construct. The Cathar, ever pragmatic, bombarded its inert surface with hails in over 1,000 known galactic languages. Then, receiving no response, cautiously targeted it with low-power energy beams, searching for weaknesses or reactions. The Mycalibrarians extended delicate psionic probes, hoping to sense a consciousness within. All attempts were met with the same profound, unyielding silence. The construct remained utterly inert, its material composition bafflingly resilient, shrugging off their efforts as a mountain might shrug off a breeze. Aboard the Odyssey, far from the main investigative efforts, Dr. Aris Thorne was engaged in his own, far less conventional research. He had his console display not complex sensor readings, but pages from humanity's oldest texts. The Enumera Lish, the Rigveda, fragments of the pyramid texts, scanned images of megalithic art. He mumbled to himself, tracing patterns, noting faint, almost certainly coincidental, resemblances between the vague, cyclopean outline of the construct and certain recurring symbols found in ancient Terran cultures. A coiled serpent, a winged disk, a great mountain reaching to the heavens. "Captain," he said, his voice hesitant, "do you notice the slight curvature on the construct's dorsal spine? There's a similar motif in pre-dynastic Egyptian depictions of Nut, the sky goddess, arched over the earth. Captain Rostova offered a patient smile. Aris, it's a billion-kilometer-long alien object. I'm sure we could find a resemblance to a particularly interesting piece of toast if we stared long enough. Let the big ships run their scans. Our job is to observe and try not to get underfoot. Ensign Lee, however, leaned closer to Thorne's console, intrigued. Which symbols, Doctor? Suddenly, the construct pulsed again. This time, it was not just a surge of raw energy, but a complex, focused wave of intricate data. The alien flagships immediately whirred into action, their powerful supercomputers capturing the signal, attempting to decrypt, to translate, to find any discernible meaning. But the language, the mathematics, the underlying principles of the transmission were utterly alien. They could detect complex patterns, intricate repetitions, undeniable signs of intelligence, but no actual meaning. It was like listening to a symphony played with instruments no one had ever seen, in a key that didn't exist. Dr. Thorne, however, was listening to the raw sonification of the data pulse, the clicks, whistles, and rhythmic drones that the Odyssey's computer translated from the energy wave. A strange look of intense concentration came over his face. The cadence, the almost liturgical rhythm of the pulses, sparked a wild, improbable flicker of recognition. It reminded him of something deeply buried in his studies, the reconstructed sound of ancient Sumerian priests chanting their hymns, or the powerful, alliterative meter of a Proto-Indo-European epic. Ensign Lee, Thorne said, his voice tight with a sudden, almost fearful excitement. Forget the standard galactic decryption algorithms. Patch the raw signal directly into the linguistic analysis module. I want you to run it through translation matrices. Start with Earth's oldest, most obscure dead languages. Sumerian, Akkadian, Eblate, and yes, definitely Proto-Indo-European. Rostova raised an eyebrow. Doctor, that's a long shot, to say the least. Perhaps, Captain, Thorne replied, never taking his eyes off the data stream. But every advanced alien language protocol has failed. What if this isn't just alien? What if it's old? So old it predates them all. To the utter astonishment of everyone on the Odyssey's bridge, including Dr. Thorne himself, when Ensign Lee, after several frustrating minutes of reconfiguring the translation software, filtered the construct's baffling signal through a matrix for late-stage Proto-Indo-European, something happened. It wasn't a clear translation, not at first, but the chaotic noise resolved into distinct, recognizable linguistic roots. Grammatical structures, long extinct on Earth, flickered across Lee's console. The Odyssey's modest computer, far less powerful than the quantum brains of the alien flagships, began to spit out fragmented words, then phrases. Weapon, speech, mother, son, path, self, silentium. The last word was Latin, an intruder, but its meaning was clear. More, Thorne urged, his voice hoarse. Feed it Sumerian logograms. Try early Vedic Sanskrit phonemes. As Lee complied, feeding the constructs ongoing broadcast samples of Earth's most ancient and forgotten tongues, the signal from the megastructure began to shift, to clarify. It was as if the construct recognized these linguistic keys, as if it were adapting its own archaic language to meet them. Then, it began to broadcast, not just abstract data, but images, sounds, directly into the communications systems of every ship in the fleet. The language it used was a chilling, resonant amalgam of Earth's oldest, long-dead languages, a chorus of voices from the dawn of human memory. On the alien flagships, chaos erupted. The Centauri supercomputers could only classify the language as unknown, anomalous, exhibiting characteristics of Class Omega primitive root systems. Their linguists were utterly baffled. The Cathar communication arrays registered the input, but could make no sense of it. Only on the small, insignificant human exploration vessel, the HES Odyssey, could the message be understood. And the message was a revelation that shattered the foundations of galactic history. It was a lament, a sprawling historical record, and a dire warning. It revealed that the builders of the construct, a mighty interstellar civilization that had strode across the galaxies when the current galactic powers were nothing but primordial ooze on their respective homeworlds, were not an alien species in the way the galaxy understood it. They were, unmistakably, proto-humans, or an ancestral species so closely related as to be indistinguishable to the untrained eye. Images, stark and deeply resonant, flooded the view screens. Beings remarkably similar to archaic humans, taller, perhaps more gracile, their features possessing a severe, timeless beauty, were depicted striding across alien landscapes, shaping worlds with technologies that looked like harnessed starlight, their eyes holding the wisdom of ages. They were the original precursors, the ancients of half-forgotten galactic legends, the beings who had supposedly seeded the stars with the potential for life. The construct's narrative unfolded, a tragic epic spanning millions of years. It spoke of their vast stellar empire, their art, their science, their philosophy. It spoke of how they had indeed guided the evolution of nascent life on countless worlds, including, the data stream chillingly implied, the home worlds of the Centauri, the Cathar, and many others now floating stunned in the fleet. The guards of those species own ancient mythologies, the beings who had supposedly brought them fire or wisdom from the stars, now looked suspiciously like the regal figures depicted in the construct's broadcast. Then the tone of the lament shifted. It spoke of a shadow falling upon their magnificent civilization, an unnamed, unimaginable cosmic threat that had emerged from the absolute darkness beyond the galactic rim. The hunters of the void, the great devourers, the silence between stars. The names were many, all terrifying. This enemy was so implacable, so utterly destructive, that even the mighty proto-humans were forced into a desperate, fighting retreat that lasted for generations. Earth, the construct revealed, was not their original homeworld. It had been chosen late in their long war, a fortified sanctuary, a last redoubt, a shield world, selected for its unique telluric energies and its position within a complex web of interstellar pathways. Here, facing extinction, the last of the proto-humans made a terrible choice. To protect the myriad nascent species they had nurtured across the galaxy, and to hide their own lineage from the ever-pursuing hunters, they enacted the Great Silence. It was a voluntary, species-wide genetic and technological regression, a deliberate, programmed forgetting of their own history, their science, their very nature. They would become as children, to hide amongst the children of the galaxy. Their most advanced knowledge, their warnings, their history, was locked away in dormant constructs like the one now speaking, or perhaps encoded even deeper, within the very fabric of their own DNA, slumbering, waiting for a time of dire need or accidental rediscovery. Humanity's mythologies, the global deluge stories, the tales of fallen gods and lost golden ages, the epic battles between light and darkness, the promises of a future cataclysm and a subsequent renewal, were not mere primitive fictions. They were the fragmented, distorted, deeply buried cultural echoes of this monumental, forgotten history. The angels who wrestled with patriarchs, the shining ones who delivered wisdom to ancient prophets, the gods who walked and interbred with early humans, they were their own hyper-advanced ancestors, their memories slowly fading into legend as the Great Silence, the grand forgetting, took its inexorable hold over millennia. On the bridge of the Odyssey, a stunned silence reigned. Captain Rostova gripped her command chair, her knuckles white. Dr. Thorne was openly weeping, tears tracing paths through the lines on his face. Ensign Lee stared at the images of these majestic, ancient humans, his own reflection seeming to flicker within their ancient eyes. Then Rostova looked at her comms panel. The lines to the alien flagships were chaotic, filled with panicked alien chatter, demands for explanation, expressions of pure, unadulterated disbelief. The Centauri's logical frameworks were reportedly suffering cascading overloads. The Cathar, who prided themselves on unshakable pragmatism, were struck dumb by the sheer, universe-altering scale of the revelation. They were the children of the galaxy. And humans, these young, fragile, emotional, often irrational beings from a backwater planet, were the amnesiac, slumbering remnants of their creators, the firstborn, the true, forgotten ancients of the cosmos. The colossal construct imparted a final, massive data cached directly to the Odyssey's computers, technical schematics, star charts of impassable antiquity, historical records that would take lifetimes to decipher, and a chillingly detailed analysis of the ancient enemy and its predicted return. Then, its great purpose fulfilled for this fleeting moment in cosmic time, it fell silent once more, its surface becoming dark and inert, a silent mountain in the void. The humans on the Odyssey were left with the staggering, terrifying burden of their true history and the ancient, now reawakened, warning. Captain Rostova, her voice hoarse but steady, took a deep breath and ordered a summary of the construct's revelations to be transmitted to the stunned and silent alien fleet. The galaxy was irrevocably changed. Humans were no longer viewed as amusing upstarts or potential protectorates. They were the firstborn, the amnesiac ancients, the lost heirs of a legacy that dwarfed all other galactic civilizations combined. Every human action, every cultural quirk, every primitive, myth and baffling emotional outburst was now subject to intense, fearful re-examination. Were they just a young species, or was that ancient, unimaginable power merely slumbering within them, waiting for the right trigger or the right threat to reawaken? Galactic policy towards Earth shifted with breathtaking speed. It became a world of pilgrimage for some, a source of intense academic study for others. But for all, it was now a planet regarded with a profound mixture of awe and a deep, unsettling fear. The other species watched humanity with bated breath, wondering if they would, or even could, reclaim their lost legacy. And more importantly, they wondered if humanity, in its current state, was prepared to face the ancient, implacable enemy their mighty ancestors had fled. The universe suddenly felt much older, much larger, and infinitely more dangerous. And humanity, the forgotten children of the dawn, now stood at its terrifying, unknown, and very exposed center. The long silence was broken, and the galaxy held its breath, waiting for the Titans to stir.